Well, welcome to the Keptn developer meeting. Today is February 10th. So we have 9 people on the call. The most of them, yeah. What is this noise?
Johannes, you're not muted.
Yeah, well, I guess adjustable height of the table. Yeah, but anyway, nice to meet everyone. So we also have Mecha on the call. Would you like to introduce yourself? Probably. Yeah, if you want, you can just unmute yourself later. Yeah, so let's take a look at our agenda. So what do we have on the list? So firstly, a reminder that effective next meeting, we changed the time zone. Actually, it was supposed to happen this time, but I didn't update the calendar. So next meeting, we will be meeting at 9 a.m. UTC for developer meetings. But for community meetings, the schedule will remain the same. So next week, we have a community meeting at on Wednesday at 9 a.m. UTC. So there we will have a presentation by Brett McCoy about progressive delivery with Keptn. And on Thursday, we will have a Keptn community meeting at the current slot. But going forward, the developer meetings will happen at 9 a.m. UTC. So that's just a heads up. And I guess this is all from me. Yeah, so the most of agenda for today, I guess, Demas and Moritz, would you like to take over?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna straight away take over. Okay. So what happened in my sprint? First of all, one of the more important things, we had resource like usage stats from our Kubernetes resources basically before already. They were kind of gone in the meanwhile, and they're back now with the new pipeline setup. So basically before we had an actual cluster where we fetched the resource limits and requests from. And now I changed that, and we actually just fetch them from the Helm chart. So here basically I do a Helm template with the Keptn installer as a dry run just to get the whole chart in one file, and then I have some fancy YQ and then JQ to kind of get out and then kind of reshuffle the information so that it's in proper format. And in the end, we have, as you can see here, resources for CPU and memory. And then all that is gonna end up in a small markdown table, which is gonna be attached to all the new releases going forward. Then what I also did is I changed our integration test clusters that we use on GKE basically from being dynamic to being static. So they are running all the time now, and they're not created from scratch every time, which on the one hand saves us a little bit of time and also lots of headaches, and it gives us more flexibility with debugging, for example, when you can just go to the cluster, it's still there after the integration test run. You can look at the logs, you can look at the namespaces, everything that happened. Yeah, so going forward, we're gonna use those two clusters here, one for GKE, so Kubernetes 119, and one for Kubernetes 121 for our static integration test clusters. All the other testing platforms that we had, like K3S, K3D, and Minishift, those stayed all the same. So that's all still created on demand and then shut down at the end of the run. Yeah, and this didn't go fully smooth, so there were some two bug fixes. Yeah, two bug fixes that I had to shoot afterwards. One is for unique names in the image names in the Helm charts for every integration test run. Basically, we had the issue that if you change something and then ran the integration test again, image names would stay the same, and therefore they weren't fetched again fresh every time in the integration test run on the cluster. So basically you had a new test run, but still used the old images, so you couldn't test your new changes. And this should actually resolve that. So what I did is I only changed the condition here, but this actually in turn uses, instead of just the version for the images inside the Helm charts, it actually uses the version plus a date time, so that they are always unique when they are built, basically. And then one last thing, also another fix for our pipelines. We already have UI tests in place for the bridge and screenshots generated from that. But actually, the screenshots were only generated when the test succeeded, and if they failed, it would just exit out and not create any screenshots for us. So what I did there basically is create a small script that runs the yarn test command and then moves the screenshots to the right folder so that we can extract them from the Docker image. And then it actually checks the outcome of the tests and exits out if it failed with a non-zero value. And that's actually already all for me. So handing over to Florian.
All right, thank you. So, yeah, this sprint I was busy with one research ticket. So this one was about figuring out how we can have multiple replicas of the shipyard controller. So this was actually quite a tough nut to crack, but after a lot of head scratching, I think I found a reasonable approach that we can use going forward. So the main challenge here was that since the shipyard controller listens for it's related to the tasks that should be executed throughout a sequence, and for example, when it receives a finished event by a particular, then this means that this received event can have a further impact on the state of the sequence and its further execution. And there we had the challenge that if we have multiple replicas of the shipyard controller, where each replica can potentially receive any of those events, then those might overwrite each other's changes, and we would have some serious concurrency issues. The way to tackle this was to come up with a new data model that has one important characteristic, which is being append only, meaning that this section here, so for the representation of the current task that's being executed and its event. So now this will be the only property that will be affected by incoming events received by task executors. And this means that in this list, only new events will be added and nothing else will be changed as a direct result of a reception of such an event. And this means that the threads handling those incoming events won't overwrite each other's changes. And then, yeah, this of course allows us to achieve this concurrency. And also as a nice side effect, the code of the shipyard controller actually has gotten a lot easier, because previously we used actually a number of different collections within the MongoDB to keep track of, for example, the started events related to a task and the finished events, etc. And now all of the information that's needed for the execution of a sequence has been consolidated to this single collection, where basically the complete status of a task sequence is represented. So of course, if you want to have a closer look at the detail of this new data model, you can check out this pull request I've opened here. So here I have an example for an actual sequence execution and its representation, and with a short description below on how this is supposed to work going forward for the shipyard controller. And another aspect was, since we have these components that regularly execute jobs within the shipyard controller, so for example, the sequence dispatcher, which periodically checks whether it can start new queued sequences via the shipyard controller, the event dispatcher that is responsible for sending triggered events that have been put into the queue. So there, if we have multiple replicas of the shipyard controller where each one of those has these components running, then obviously we also might have some concurrency issues, since, for example, a sequence could be potentially started multiple times. So the same sequence, and also events might be sent out multiple times, which is of course not wanted. And for those kind of jobs, a feasible approach that kind of can be used here is to have some leader election. So for this, we can actually use the inbuilt leader election package that's part of the Kubernetes client library. And using this, we can establish a leader among the replicas of the shipyard controller, and then only the leader would be in the position where those periodic background jobs will be executed. And the other replicas would simply not have these jobs running. All right, are there any questions about that?
Question. This leader election is actually already provided completely?
This is provided by the Kubernetes library. So maybe if we can,
wow, okay.
It's actually a really simple piece of code that's being used for that. So let's see if I can grab it.
And it probably already also takes care when we lose one of the replicas, for example, that a new election happens and stuff like that.
Exactly, yeah. So just check if I can find it here, because it is, I think, yes. So here I have it. Is the font size big enough?
A bit bigger
Yeah.
would be nice, but
Okay.
Okay, I don't know the shortcut right now, but basically, as you can see here, only a couple of lines of codes are needed. So basically, you refer to a lease resource within the cluster, and then you have this run or die function where you have several callbacks, like on started leading, which is the place where we would start the dispatcher jobs, and then the on stopped leading, where the signal to stop the dispatchers is being sent, and then also the on.
That's pretty cool. Okay, thanks.
All right. Then I think that's all for me. So I'm handing over to the Andre.
Thanks. I'll share my screen for a moment. So hopefully you're seeing my screen. Yeah. So from the last sprint, I managed to fix 2 bugs which were discovered by the community members. The first one is regarding sending the double finished events by JMeter service. This was actually caused by, let's say, an improper return values from the health check. For example, it was reproducible when the endpoint of the deployed service was not reachable. So if we look at the code, at the beginning of the test runner, there is a test which runs run health check, which checks the health of the service, And if there is a problem, it should return an error. But in this case, or before our fix, it has returned nil, and therefore the execution in the JMeter service has continued to the run tests and afterwards send test results. And therefore we have received one finished event from the health check, which was that the health check has failed, and another one from the send test results, which was actually kind of unexpected, or yep. Yeah, so the second bug was about checking the unknown comments in the CLI. So for example, when a user wanted to create a project and has used an unknown comment in the CLI, actually the CLI hasn't wrote error message or whatever, hasn't screamed actually that something is bad, and it has proceed with the execution. And sometimes it also had some unexpected behavior. So we actually add a check for the unknown comments to each of the CLI commands to be properly in this way. So the user will get some warning or some error if he uses something which is not allowed. Yeah, and the rest of the sprint was actually about the research ticket regarding the remote Git repository authentication via SSH private key or via proxy server. This is actually implemented as a proof of concept. More info you can find in the research ticket. But I think in the next sprints or releases, we will be able to add this functionality to production code. So the first one will be that users will be able to authenticate to remote Git repository, not just with token and username, but also with the SSH with the private key, as you know it from the, for example, GitHub or GitLab. And also they will be able to authorize themselves via a proxy server. So all the traffic to the remote Git repository will go via the proxy server. So we will probably address this functionality in the next sprints, and hopefully the community members will be able to test it and provide the feedback for it. Yeah, that's from my side all. Are there any questions? So, good.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll stop sharing and handing over to Anna.
Thank you. So actually, just directly show the PR. Can you see my screen fine, or is it too small?
A little bit bigger would be cool.
Yeah, I thought so. Just a sec. Better. Okay, this is a problem. My whole screen disappeared. Okay, whatever. Let's go with this. So most of my time went with adding commit ID to all the services in the core. This means that now if you go in any of the run of our integration test, you will see that all of the services ping-ball to each other Git commit ID. So the evaluation starts without because of the shipyard is assigning it. After the shipyard assigned the Git commit ID, then, for instance, the Lighthouse will take it and it will forward it to the SLI like so. And if the SLI has a decision for a different commit ID, then this can happen that they pass a different one, and this gets propagated to the whole chain. And same happens in all of the other services that have retrieval of information. So for instance, this is delivery assistance. So this is, how's it called? Remediation. And that also happens in self-healing and in the sequences where we have a JMeter or anything like that. So all of these services works the same. The only thing that is different is in this moment, the Helm service is ignoring the Git commit. And this is because we still haven't changed the way we are storing the Helm service files in our repository. This PR involved changing a bunch of things in the resource service. Mainly, there were some bugs like having an extra head branch and not really ignoring faultly made queries. And also I profited from this to make a couple of changes in the GoUtil, and mainly the changes regards introducing a different way of retrieving information from the resource service. Now we can just call simple functions that are that are this four. Zoom in. Basically, whenever we want to get, delete, or update or create a resource, we can pass a model containing all the scope of the resources, so project stage and whatnot, and any kind of options we add to the changing the URI to access the resource. So for instance, I provide a function that helps you appending queries to the URL. So that any kind of query parameter that is passed to it, it will be appended to the URL, and you can use all of them the same. And then another tiny change that I did for all these PRs is changing the way that a bit of the structuring of the Helm service and changing the way that the Helm service retrieves the charts. This is done now with a retriever, and the retrieve function makes use of the new GoUtils function I made. And then a very last thing I worked this sprint was researching whether or not we can have multiple replicas of core services. I have a few integration tests run for this, both locally and on our integrations clusters. Most of our services can actually be duplicated right now, so you can test it on your own with the 0.13. Only problem is the configuration service, of course. For the research service, there are still a few things that have to be fixed. I have done so in this POC. Mostly there are some parts in which we delete the project or in which we try to access the Git repository pooling that needed to be changed because we were having no fast forward issues. And as far as we avoid using branching in the stages, then the resource service is ready to go for multiple replicas. And I think that sums up what I did this sprint. I'm handing over to, I don't know, to Klaus.
Okay, thanks. So let me share the screen. Could you stop screen sharing?
If I find the file, yes.
Okay.
This is thing complicated. Okay.
Okay, which one is the right one? This one. Okay. So let's begin. The first issue I was working on was the single sign-on, because currently we cached all the user information like access token, ID token, or also the validation data that is used for the OpenID flow, we just cached it. The problem here was that if the bridge was restarted, or if we in future decide to have multiple pods of the bridge, this will not work, because on one pod the user has a session and on another pod the session is not available. So we changed the caching to the MongoDB we currently have for Keptn. And this is then used for the session. So each bot uses the same MongoDB and has the same user data. And then there will no inconsistencies. Next to that, also the data that is stored in the MongoDB, everything is encrypted with a secret that is generated on install, and also a session secret that is used for hashing the user ID. And that's basically it for the SSO login. Any questions to that? If not, I will go to the next issue. We moved the uniform page that was currently here, shown, and the integration page into the settings, and moved the settings from the bottom to the top. And that's basically it. Moved it to the settings page, and also we fixed the indicator for the error events. So before it was a bit inconsistent, and now if you read the error logs of something, the error events, it is immediately removed, and you see, you have this one that is not read yet, and that's basically this one. So everything is moved here, and also all the UI tests were adjusted, etc. Then any questions to that? If not, then I will go to the next one. This was a small bug fix. Before, there was an error, just a small one. If the filter was set to something with no sequences and it was reverted back, then there was a loading indicator shown at the bottom, and now this is fixed, that this will not show up anymore. And that's basically it. And that's it from my side. Are there any further questions? If not, then I will hand over to Ermin.
Just lost him.
Okay.
Now he's back.
Okay, Ermin, are you here?
So
Okay.
now I can hear you. I had connection issues. I'm gonna present two pull requests, two features for the Keptn's bridge. The first one I was working on was using the new evaluation finished payload, and with that we made some UI adoptions to the SLI breakdown. So let's see what happened here. Actually, now the Lighthouse service provides the compared value. So when evaluation happens and we get the result. Previously, we calculated the compared with value by retrieving the compared event payloads and calculating the result there. Now the Lighthouse service provides us with this value, and we don't need to aggregate those data on the client side, on the bridge side anymore. And furthermore, we improved the way how the absolute and the relative change is displayed. So previously it was just in brackets behind the value itself, indicating plus and or minus the absolute and the relative value, which we now improved a little bit, and I can show it here in live. So when the SLI is not expanded, we show the value and the relative change next to it immediately. And when you expand it, then you can see the absolute change, the relative change, and the compared with value here in a breakdown. Yeah, I think that was all about this pull request. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Ermin, when it comes to coloring, I think that one is currently misleading, because when we take a look here at this example, we see an increase by 99 milliseconds or whatever, and this is red, but actually it's bad in the sense of we have, or it takes longer now, and
Yeah.
should be red from my point of view, or we leave it out, or we just have no coloring here.
It's currently, and I think previously it was green when the number raised and red when it was decreased, it dropped. But it depends obviously on the SLI, because sometimes a higher value is better and sometimes a lower value is better.
Yeah,
In terms of our request throughput, a lower value might be
You could
a
maybe
higher value maybe better, but the response time is a lower value better.
you could maybe make it corresponding to the result outcome. So here you have failed on the right. Maybe that's something
Yeah,
to take into account.
that would be so. If it's not failed, just add it. But if it failed, then mark it as red.
For example, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
good idea.
Yeah, sure. This pull request is still not merged, so I can add it here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Any more questions to this?
No thanks.
Cool. Yeah, and the second pull request I want to show is which I created just a few minutes before the community meeting, is showing a history of quality gates in the environment details screen. So previously, we show in the environment screen the score of evaluation of the latest evaluation of this service on this specific stage. And we got the request to show on the details page a list of evaluations, so the history, as we already have this in the heat map, for example, here in the bubbles. And as you can see, I will just show a live demo. Oh, I have local changes. Sorry, cannot show you the live demo, but as you can see from the screenshot here on the right side, so when you click on a stage, for example, I clicked here on hardening, then you have on the right side the hardening stage and all the services listed. And next to the service, you see the current evaluation, which is the right one. And then you see at most 5 last evaluations before that as a history, so you can see how your score changed. Yeah.
Missing the weather icons.
Sorry?
Missing weather icons from Jenkins.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, we removed them there too.
Mhm.
But yeah,
But
yeah, looks really nice.
maybe some feedback. It would be really nice to have some differentiation, I don't know, in color or something to make it more clear which one is the latest one and which ones are the old ones. Because from here, I don't know which is the latest one, or is it from left to right, from right to left?
Yeah, true. In the heat map, it's easier to read because we have the legend. So we have the x-axis, which is labeled. but here we could maybe
Maybe
make
play
the
with opacity or
history,
something.
opacity or something
Or
like
like
that.
lightness of color or so.
Mm.
I don't know. Just a
We have
feeling.
we have these bubbles already have a fill feature, so either it's filled with the color or just the border is in the red or green color. So maybe that would also be good enough to the historical values show only the border color, for example. But yeah, thanks for the feedback. This one is also still open, so I will change that as well. Yeah. Okay. Are there any further questions to this one? If not, then I'm handing over to Johannes.
All right. Okay, never mind. I have two updates to share. The first one is about CAP 65. If you follow this CAP, or let me just jump there first, because this is actually all about the idea of having a Keptn operator as well as a GitOps operator. This was born in an innovation day, and now Thomas is driving that one, the topic, and he also came up with a very nice drawing, giving us an overview of what this is all about. And it's really the idea of having here a Keptn Git operator, which takes over the communication with the repositories, and then the Keptn operator, which applies Keptn CRDs to Kubernetes and also talks to the control plane. And when you follow this CAP, then one of the last action items and decisions that were made on this CAP are actually splitting it into two separate ones. The one is dealing now with the Keptn Git operator, and the new CAP is then exclusively for the Keptn operator. So we have then two disjunct discussions, while the Git operator depends on the Keptn operator, meaning that this one has higher priority like the other one, and so we can also focus on that one more and also emphasize driving this topic better. And this is what I did last week. I split up the original CAP into two separate ones, and now we have really focused conversations on both topics. And beginning this week, I filed a new CAP enhancement proposal. Actually, this is a feature we are missing for some time now. It's the ability to add or remove a stage to or from a project. The idea is pretty straightforward. You can set up stages when you create a project, but once this is done, you have no chance to add or delete a stage to your project. And the use case is I want to add a new stage to a project. I did here some very bad drawing or mockup, which should just visualize the idea of having here a plus symbol, which allows me to add a stage in between dev and chaos stage, and also to have here an icon which should allow me to duplicate this dev stage to have it in parallel to the dev. I think it's better to show it here where we have the hardening. When I duplicate this one, I get the same the same stage just with another name on the same level. In this case, it would be the quality assurance stage, which shows up this way. As I said, it's I think definitely not the final mockup we want to have for this capability when it comes to the bridge. Actually, when uploading this image, I thought about moving this functionality into the settings page that Klaus showed us before, because this is currently our entry point when it comes to modifications for the project stages and the future also for the stages, and not have it in the environment screen. But I just want to show you the idea of what this Keptn enhancement proposal is about. It's really all about adding and also deleting a stage to a project or from a project. All right, yeah, I have also the API as well as the CLI command for this purpose, and please feel free to comment on that or to provide your ideas. Or are there any questions right away? Okay, then I'm done, and I would like to hand over to Suraj.
I don't think he's actually here.
Suraj, at the beginning he was participating. But it looks that he's gone, yeah.
Maybe I'll take it offline because I do have a few topics as a follow-up for Datadog service. So yeah, I'll follow up with Suresh later.
Okay.
I think there are no further bullets on the list. Feedback, questions? Okay, it's not the case.
Then just a quick reminder. So next week we meet at the same time, but for community meeting. And developer meetings are officially moving to 9 a.m. UTC, 10 a.m. set. So starting from February 24th. Yeah. Thanks everyone for nice demos. Sorry if I interrupted.
All right. Okay, thanks for the reminder. I think we can close the meeting then for today.
Then have a nice evening, everyone.
Cool.
Have a nice
See
one.
you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.